Have you heard anything else? Yeah. You ready? Have you heard anything else? Yeah. You ready? Have you heard anything else? Hello there. I am so glad you are here tonight, and you are listening to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, and I'm Kat Hobson, your host. I absolutely love what I get to do, and I am just about to be able to go to the Ozark Mountain UFO conference in April, so I'm gearing up for that, and I will have Fate Mags and some other things with me, so find me. But that's going to be such a great conference. We're going to be having a show about that soon. But tonight, I am really excited because when you've been friends with somebody for years and you find out all the things you didn't know that you didn't know about them, that's kind of fun. And my guest tonight is Rich Hoffman. He is an original founding member of the Scientific Coalition on UAP Studies, which is a research group focused on UAP/UFO. And they are looking at the technical side, trying to understand what this is, why this is, how this is. And this is a group of people that have so many letters after their names. They are brilliant. They're funny. They're nice. They're just wonderful researchers. They're the best in their fields. And it's interesting because the Galileo Project people are part of this group. Rich Hoffman is part of this group. So are all of the other originals who are just some of the kindest men. It's just fun. But anyway, Rich has been my guest so many times and we're friends. And so I just thought I'm going to find something to put into his bio to talk about that I didn't know about already. So I went through and I found, you can't read that. I found multiple pages upon multiple pages of notes about my friend who has been in this field. He's been interested in UAP since he was a kid. And I was so humbled because I was just like, oh my gosh, he never told me this. I didn't know that. And I have listened to him on other shows and they never brought it up either. So, hi. So I am so excited to bring Rich Hoffman back because we're going to talk about the things I didn't know and the things he has going on. So, hi, Rich.
Hi, how you doing? I'm a little nervous about what you found out.
All of it's good. All of it's good. So, I am just so glad you're here because I have so much fun when I get a chance to talk to you. Lillian wants to know who you are. So, hi, Brenton. So, he is a founding member of the Scientific Coalition on UAP Studies. He has been on the Proof is Out There numerous times on numerous topics. He has done the Bermuda Triangle edition. He's done one episode on the Bermuda Triangle. He has done 2 episodes on Skinwalker, and I wanted to talk to him about that too. And he has done 4 episodes on the Alien edition. And I am just T3 Disc says, tell us all the dirt. Hi, Rich. So that's fun. And Brittany Ferguson's just fun, and Lillian is also. But it's really, I knew about the MUFON things, right? Because you were my state director, you were the director of investigations, you were the STAR team manager, which I think is fun, and you're a director of strategic projects. And I just think that, as we go on down, then, you're part of UAPX, the Society for UAP Studies, American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, UAP Community of Interest, all these things. Rich, how do you have time to go and put your lederhosen on and go dance in Germany? I mean, oh my gosh.
Well, the good thing is
That's,
now that I was doing most of that while I was still working and have my at my
heavens.
army job, my IT job for 30 some years, and now I'm retired. So I retired in October, so I've even got more time. And oh, by the way, I've got something practically scheduled every day. So I'm a very busy guy.
You're going to have to go back to work to rest.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have told me that, you need to go back and rest.
But, I just am so, well, and you do know, you probably knew before anybody else did how interested I am in this and what a sincere, dedicated interest I have.
Yep.
And you were gracious enough to allow me to be part of it. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm glad you're on board with it.
Me too. And, I just really think that the things that got you here, I know about, but people that might not have heard us before may not. So you started in Ohio.
Yep.
And what made you just sink your teeth into this topic and run with it?
Yeah, well, it's some question I'm always asked, and that is like, how did you get started in this, or what led you to UFOs, or whatever, and why are you still with it?
Well, you're still with it because it's fascinating.
So for me, it's a situation where I got started in my 8th grade science class, of all things. I was 13 years old. Had no interest in the subject whatsoever before, but the teacher had put a list together of topics that he wanted you to present on, and you had to do a 10-minute presentation in front of the class. And in my situation, I was in the band, and I had to walk, put my instrument away and everything else before his class, and then walk across a huge field to get to the actual school to be able to do it. So I was late. And I missed the fact that you had to sign up, but somebody came around and said, here's the list. And, the only thing that was left on it that nobody put their name next to was UFOs. And I didn't even know what that was. So I went up and I said, hey, Mr. Bayshore, can you please tell me what, a UFO is? And he said, unidentified flying object. I said, well, what is that? And I'm living in Dayton, Ohio. Little did I know that up the road was Project Blue Book and Project Sign and all those different projects going on. But I came to learn that later on. But anyway, I didn't really do much with it. I remember, getting a book called My Trip to Venus or something like that, or My Saturnian Lover or whatever. Probably read that, and I got up in front of the class and I bombed it. I literally bombed it. I said, and my teacher started asking questions. Well, what about jet pursuits? I said, what were you reading? I couldn't answer anything, and so I got a D on that report, and I, went home that evening, and lo and behold, Walter Cronkite came on in the 6 o'clock news and was talking about the fact that there was a landing in Socorro, New Mexico of an object. And this was around April 24th, 1964. And so he talked about that. And I'm listening to this news story about this UFO and the Socorro, New Mexico case with Patrolman Alani Zamora and everything else. And there were 2 small beings that were seen outside of an object that was like egg-shaped, if you would. And I thought, wow, that's pretty incredible. So a couple days later, my aunt invited me to go with her to a bookstore that was in downtown Dayton called Wilkie's. And I went, and I remember walking up to the, somebody behind a desk and said, can you point me out to where there's any books on UFOs? And they took me and they pointed out that it's over here, and take a look. And I found a book that was written by, the former head of Project Blue Book, Edward Ruppelt, called The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects. And so I got that book and I started reading it. And the first sentence in it was talking about jet pursuits where they were shooting at them. I'm like, well, what? This is obviously the book that my teacher had probably read,
right.
And because everything in that thing, he was like hitting me with. And I was always, so anyway, I read that thing multiple times from front to back. I was like so in awe of the fact that there were these legitimate cases globally, and that there was actually an Air Force study going on, and it was just up the road from me in Dayton, Ohio. So that got me hooked. And I started collecting Fate magazines out, and all the other kinds of magazines, and got newspaper clippings on the subject, read them from as much as I could, starting getting books. And then, by about age 15 or so, I'm now going around the city of Dayton lecturing to adults on the subject of UFOs. And I remember going up to I gave a lecture at an astronomy club, and the challenging thing was, in the background there was a duck that was calling me a quack the whole time. But anyway, that I was able to get through that one, and then I kept doing other lectures and stuff like that. And then eventually what happened was, there's a famous guy that's on TV called Phil Donahue, wants me to come in and be on the show at age 15. So now I'm on the show with Phil Donahue at 15 years old, talking about my interest in the subject of UFOs. And then the next thing, I became kind of like the UFO guy of Dayton, Ohio. And
That's a pretty big thing there.
I'm starting to get reports left and right that are coming in, and I'm like, there's a lot of sightings, and I need to do something with that, right? Well, anyway, the join with somebody and learn that, and so I actually got hooked up with NICAP, and then eventually I also went and I became like a MUFON. It was, at that time, it was not Mutual UFO Network. It was called the Midwest UFO Network. And that's when they started in '69. And so I got hooked into that right off the bat. And then after that, I became the state section director for Dayton, Ohio with MUFON. I was going out and doing investigations all over the place. I was training field investigators that I had. I would hold meetings in my garage every month, and we would start going out and doing that. And then I joined the Ohio UFO Investigators League. And then in 1978, we held one of the largest MUFON symposiums ever held in Dayton, Ohio. And I had Hynek there. I had Donald Kehoe was there. I had Ted Blocher and a whole bunch of other incredible people. And we completely filled the convention center with 3,000 people. That's how big it was. And
wow.
It was absolutely, Leonard Stringfield was there, and he was going to be talking about the crash retrieval cases, and it was an amazing event in 1978. But all that along that, I was on TV, radio stations all across Dayton, Ohio, and suddenly again I was going on case investigations where the police departments had my phone number. They were calling me up and telling me, and they were actually escorting me. I would get in the back of the cruiser, and we would go out to the actual cases themselves in the police cruiser. And so I would be also doing, there were a couple instances where I was actually out doing an investigation, and sitting next to me was the Air Force guy from Project Blue Book. And so we had a couple times where we'd exchange information. And then I ended up going up. I ended up going up to the base and lecturing them on UFOs at Foreign Technology Division. And, I'm to them on UFOs and stuff like that. And I got to know, a lot of the people at Blue Book and stuff like that. And they closed. I got to meet Hynek, when he was up there. I ended up going to his house up in Evanston when he moved up, and when it was up in there. And so I've had this incredible history around the whole subject.
Well, the funny thing is that how many times have we talked about this, both in person and on the air?
Yeah, and, I know. Yep.
It's just, I was sitting there because I was looking for something different, because, I don't want you to be bored when you come, right? I want you to have something new, or
I'm not bored talking to you at all. Yeah.
Thank you. I feel that way about you too. I just love it when we get the chance to do this. But I'm sitting there going, I thought I read everything about him. I thought I knew him. This is my friend. I thought I'd done all of this. And I guess I missed a page somewhere or 100. But, it's just so funny because, you know, the alternate propulsion engineering conference is where I found a lot of the information about you. And because that's
Yep.
people that's not unlike SCU, right? I don't
Yep.
feel in its goals. So trying
Yep.
to find how this is working, not just what is this that's working, but how this is working. And, that's just so interesting to me. And, one of the things that also because of the planet alignments and stuff, I bet that y'all are going to be seeing a lot of people. I mean, you won't be getting reports, but you'll be seeing reports from all these people that are out sky watching right now. And there's a lot more interest off planet because of what's happened this week and this weekend.
Yeah.
Because it seems that anytime there's something that seems to be a threat to our planet, there's more activity. And
Mm-hmm.
do you see? I mean, you've done this for this long. Do you find that might be a possibility? The truth of that?
Well, we tend to get lots of people that are seeing things, just when they're up there looking at the sky in general. I mean, there's a lot of things in
Mhm.
the sky that people are just not people that they don't spend time looking up. They're either looking at a phone
Yeah.
or they're indoors. And if you look at most of the UFO reports, we get in like a MUFON. It's always if you read the typical case, it'll say something like, "Well, I went out last night at 7 o'clock for a cigarette," you know.
Yes. Or to walk the dog.
Or I'm out walking the
The dog
dog,
gets it
or I'm
too.
out
Yeah.
doing this. And so a lot of reports that come in, to even to MUFON and stuff like that, when I was doing MUFON cases, we're always like starting off with like, I was out, smoking a cigarette or whatever I was doing. And bottom line, there they are. And so you run across that. In the cases of also, a lot of people are looking up at, when they have a lunar eclipse or an eclipse of some sort, they're looking up
Yes.
at the sky, and so they see something that's out of the ordinary, and so for the people that know where to report it, they often will report it. Not everybody reports. The vast majority of people don't even report it to anybody,
Well,
and that's where statistics are always wrong about the subject.
they are wrong. And I'll tell you because I had such an experience because, I sit on the deck with the dogs and let them run and play. And
Yeah,
usually I'm
sure.
actually down in the yard with them. But when I get tired, I come upstairs and let them keep on. But I had an incident that I tried to report to MUFON. Went through the whole, process, got all the way through, and bloop, wouldn't take it. And I had 2 incidents that I tried to do that with. And so finally I just called Steve and I said, "Your system's not working. I just had this happen. I'm trying to, and he was like, "Well, report that." I said, "I am. I'm telling you because your system doesn't work."
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
did that twice and they got it working. But I guess they got it working. But it was a big enough deal that I actually
Mm-hmm.
tried to report it. And
Yep.
so
But the general public
that needs
don't even think they don't even know where to report it. I mean,
uh-uh.
my farming family out in Missouri they wouldn't report anything like that. I mean, there's a lot of other people I talk with that don't report. When I give lectures, I always ask the people, how many of you have seen something? And I'll get hands that go up. How many have reported it? Nobody's hand goes up. And so, and then there are phenomena out there like, the Earthlight phenomena that's out in about an hour away from me in Cloverdale that 2 gentlemen wrote a book about called the Cloverdale Spook Lights. And
Yeah.
bottom line there was that for 2 years that they were doing their investigations, nobody out there reported anything that they had seen. And yet there's this phenomena that's out there, that 8 foot in diameter, glowing balls, or what you call orbs, or a lot of people call orbs, but spheres that go up to like 2,000 feet altitudes and shoot across the skies, and and nobody reports it. They were just called the spook lights, and you'd see somebody like, "Hey, look, Ethel, there's a spook light out there again," that type thing.
Well, Thomas Divide is like that. Thomas Divide outside of
Yeah,
Cherokee, North Carolina. I actually have been working on a project relevant to that because I the first time I went to Thomas Divide, I had heard about them. I had somebody on that was talking about Brown Mountain, and they were like, "Oh, and Thomas Divide has lights." And I'm like, "Really?" So David plays poker, and I'm not supposed to go up there by myself at night while he's playing poker, but you know, it's something to do. I don't get out of the car because I saw a whole passel of hogs on a mother with like a litter of baby hogs. I do not get out of my car. All of my doors are locked. And I actually have seen and experienced these, and they behaved intelligently. One of them did because
yeah,
and they're different colors,
yeah,
right? So it's not
yeah,
atmospheric, but well, it could be atmospheric. I don't know, but they do create different colors. There's blue and
yeah,
orange and pink and different things.
yeah.
And they're not there every night. So in fact, David went and got me a topography map so that I could look and see what was on the ridge across from me, and nothing that would create that. So and plus you couldn't do it every night because they're not there every night.
Right.
And it's interesting. But anyway, I was sitting there and I'd been filming, and I had put my camera down to do something. And when I looked up and I was picking my camera up, and one of those lights was on my side of the divide.
Hmm.
And there was a tree hanging over the little rock wall that's there. And I was just kind of like, well, hello. I'm glad you came to see me because I'm here to see you, but do not invade my space.
Hmm.
And thank you for being interested back. I mean, I talked to it,
Sure.
and it was just fine, because it felt smart, it felt intelligent. And so that was my experience, my up close experience with the Thomas Divide lights. It was the first and only time I've had one come across to me, and I told it that I was uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So, maybe that's why they haven't done it since. But it, I was talking with one of the rangers there, and she's like, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going up to Thomas Divide to see the lights." And she was like, "Oh, well, I don't know about that." I said, "Well, I do. I've seen them a couple of times." And she's like, "What?" She said, "My kids are 18 years old and they've been trying their whole lives and they have never gotten to see them." I said, "Well, tell them to go with me when I go because apparently they show up for me. I don't know." But the last time I went up there, somebody pulled up too close to my car. And I was like, "Nope, I'm not doing that." So, because I'm just nosy, I'm not stupid. So it was time to go at that point. But it's just cool because I haven't seen the brown, but I've never heard of a disappearance, like an abduction or anything with these, like with Brown Mountain. Brown Mountain's scary.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Brown Mountain lights, you've got the Marfa lights, you've got the
Mm-hmm.
Min lights in Australia, you've got
Mm-hmm.
the Hesselen, Norway. There was the Cloverdale in 1973. You had a whole flurry of them over in Piedmont, Missouri. In fact, there was a professor that went down there, that Harley Rutledge, that actually investigated them. Um, and so they're a common phenomena globally, and it's when you take a look at them under and you actually take a photograph and you analyze them with a diffraction grating, you can break down the chemical elements that make of them. And so with the ones in Norway, we were able to break out that it's hydrogen, it's got nitrogen, oxygen, uh, it's got sulfur, iron, and then it's got a rare earth metal called scandium. And scandium is used in Hollywood as a means of taking a nighttime set and it illuminates it, make it look like daylight. So when you think that these objects are igniting, it's like a bubble. Think of a bubble with gases in it.
Like a bubble.
And in the bubble is this rotating kind of stuff. A lot of people see rotations and spirals and various other things in it. And it's this gas, if you would, that has somehow ignited and lit up. And so it's a natural earth phenomenon. It's the earth is belching out this kind of like these ingredients, and it goes into a bubble and it stays in there, and then it can move it around, and it can move against the wind. It can do all different kinds of things. When and there's a case in the Brown Mountain Lights where actually an individual had one that came and it hit his leg, and it literally knocked him to the ground because there was an electric discharge that took place on his leg. And then in Norway, there was an instance where one of these lights actually went and it hit the mountain peak, and there was snow, and it left a spiraling kind of pattern where it actually touched the snow. And when they analyzed the snow, it killed all the bacteria that was in that snow, that sample that we had. All the bacteria was killed. Again, electrical discharge of some sort. So you've got this, like, think of like almost like a plasma that's moving around in this bubble, kind of like sphere that is containing it, and it's able to maneuver around. And so you'll get a situation where sometimes you might have this thing happen where it can go along, and it could touch things. And we talk about cars that actually lose their discharge or like that, and can't operate. Or you might even have power outages. It might be around a telephone pole. There are a lot of pilots that see those things and report them. And again, it's not a UFO. It's a natural occurring atmospheric phenomena that scientists have failed to truly study properly. And once we get that down, then we'll learn about that. And that will be able to help us understand these so-called orbs, which we want to put into the UFO category.
I don't think orbs should be in a UFO category.
Well,
do you?
No, what you have is it's a problem with our taxonomy on what we use as terms. It's just like, the flying saucer was not a good term, and people struggle with that.
Well, that was Kenneth Arnold. He didn't know what else to call them.
Yeah, true. And so when you take, what does this look like to you? This is round, kind of like, right? Sphere? Would this be a round thing around? Okay, but when I turn it on an angle, now it's kind of oval, and when I get it on, it's a disc, right? So depending upon how people see this, at what angle, they might say that I saw a round object, I saw an oval object, or I saw a disc. We have problems with terminology that humans use to be able to describe these unusual events. And a lot of people latch onto orbs just because it's a light, right? It's a light.
Right.
And so what could that light be? It could be a Chinese lantern that somebody sent up, and they see that scintillation of that object. And they say, so I had people that were telling me that those Chinese lanterns were orbs. Earthlight phenomena.
I'll tell you what.
Round, it's a light, and they say it's an orb. Again, the problem is our use of words.
Well, and that is a human. That's the human.
Say, even Romans in the earlier times were calling them fiery shields. So it makes sense, right? They're called fiery shields. Anyway, so we have a problem in trying to describe this unusual thing, and that's where the human element becomes a problem for us. We try to move to technology to be able to help us.
Yes. Well, that's one of the reasons that I like, we had been talking about UAP DAP earlier before the show, but projects like that coming up with, and this was in the Unitas Basin, is that the name of it? Where there was so much activity.
Utah Basin?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
How did you say it?
It's called the Uintah Basin, and it's up near Vernal in the Utah area. It's east of Salt Lake City. Is that what you're
Okay.
talking about, the Skinwalker Ranch?
Well, not
No?
Skinwalker, although there is activity of that nature there. This is UNITAS Basin.
Oh, I'm not sure I know what that is. No.
That's where Christopher O'Brien was doing his research up there, but he's passed away, so I can't ask him. But when I first saw UAP DAP, I was just fascinated by that because it seemed so smart, you know, to have cameras that had this capability monitoring such large areas. And I just, are we getting information with that type of equipment?
Oh yeah, we're getting extremely good quality information, by the way. So you have, the UFO DAP is one system. There's these Sky 360, which is over in Europe, by the way, and that's kind of a corollary to it. You've also got, I don't know if you knew or not, Francis Ridge just recently passed, but Francis had a system called MADAR, which was a magnetic detector. It basically would detect if there was a magnetic deviation, and it would alert you. A lot of those units are out. There's also a lot of development that is going on. Even the AIAA's got a whole suite of different kinds of tools you can purchase and go and put out. There's also Eldaron, which is also a very incredible system that can go out and to do all different kinds of things and give you a lot of multi-data. And we're trying to get it moving over to multiple sensors because, one sensor might not detect something where the other sensor does, or they both sensors can detect something. Like, for example, if, we always say that UFOs don't have any sound. Well, is it because it's above human hearing, or is it because it's below human hearing? And so you have to have sensors that can listen above the human hearing range and below, right? To be able to know, because it might be making a sound, we just don't hear it. Additionally, we're wanting to, go ahead.
I don't think that they're silent. I mean,
well, the vast majority of the reports are that they move silently, and a lot of people describe that.
But
yeah. So the question is,
I mean, I haven't ever heard one, but
yeah,
I wasn't close enough to have heard one either.
Right. And so there's a lot of different factors that come into play when you hear something that's up, like, say, 20,000 feet. You're not going to hear it because, the wind might be blowing the sound in a different direction, right? Again, It's about the fact that you might have close encounters where people are actually seeing something relatively close, and they, it shoots off and they don't hear any noise, and so how does it do that and not make a noise or sound? And so the interesting thing for us is being able to actually to detect the signatures around these things. What are they doing in the atmosphere? Are they affecting the atmosphere? Is there kind of like, in the case of the Nimitz case, there was actually a mirage around the Tic Tac. And so that's an interesting effect. We have cases where these things are seen and they touch ground. Like if you take a look at Delphos, Kansas, that was a situation where an object came down next to a tree, and the tree glowed, and as well as the ground glowed in a ring for 4 nights. And so if you take a look at the fact that it was actually, the ground was glowing in a ring-like pattern and it also completely dehydrated the soil down to a depth of about 2 or 3 feet. And even to this day, it's hydrophobic. You can pick the soil up and you can put it in a bucket of water and it just floats on the top and it doesn't turn into mud. So if you have the Delphos, Kansas case like that, and you have these other effects that are going on, you start to learn about those effects and you find out, well, maybe it's the field around the object that it's actually having an impact in cooking the soil, like, and so to speak. So the more we can look and study these cases and learn about them and find out how they, what we can about their effects in the atmosphere. Like, does it heat up water when it moves? Does it impact water? Does it impact the atmosphere? Why is it that the Tic Tac, when it was dropping from 20,000 feet and stopping above the water in less than 1 second, how is it that it didn't heat up or create any kind of like ripples in the water? How did it not make a sonic boom? How did it not do anything normal in our atmosphere that we would expect?
Right.
Then you're going to say, well, how does it do that? And what does it do? And the more we can learn about those cases, and it's technologies and a suite of technology tools we're going to have out at hotspots is going to help us to learn more. And that's where I am going, and that's where we are going right now in all the meetings that I've been having around with technologists around the world. I had a 2-day summit at the beginning of February with global people in this whole topic. We had 500 people attending. I just met with a whole group of them yesterday. We talked for 2 hours. I'm going to be lecturing on it, and also this coming Thursday at 1 p.m. Central Time, the Society for UAP Studies is going to have me on as a guest, and I'm talking about the subject of technology use. So that's where I'm at. I'm looking to be able to get better than eyeballs and better than anecdotal storytelling things. I want to get data that I can measure, I can look at, and I can get to understand these things better.
Well, that's the whole key, is to get enough data that you can ascertain even between styles of reported craft. Or because I know that what I have seen was different from what other people have seen, and mine was kind of freaky. But Robert said that these phenomena can manipulate any devices recording the events, and said identical devices simultaneously recording the same event can see the same thing differently. Psychic manipulation is often assumed to be advanced technology. I love Robert's brain. So
yeah, we have to find evidence that proves that claim. So we have a situation where, like for example, a case in 2013 where a pilot was flying along in southern Mississippi, and he was flying on a nice clear day, and he looks out his wing of his Cessna, and underneath it is a 4-foot in diameter silver object. And we got a FOIA request in, and we were able to go to 6 different FAA stations and find out that in one, it was fortunate enough that the right angle that it actually detected the plane. So we got proof that the plane was there. And the station in Alabama for the FAA actually tracked the object, and we were able to put them both simultaneously together and watch the pattern and movement. So you have a problem with even, as these things are like, their shape, are they distorting? Sometimes they're picked up on radar, sometimes they're not picked up on radar. It's about the devices and the sensors. It's no different than if you look at the Chinese balloon that was going across the United States. NORAD wasn't tracking it because guess what? They filtered out those things that move very, very slowly. They're looking for missiles that are moving very, very quick. And so consequently, if you're not looking at, and you don't have it calibrated properly, then you're probably not going to pick it up. We've had situations where multiple sensors can pick it up, but they're not calibrated, or there's interference on one. So again, you have to have proper calibration on the equipment if you're going to be doing this thing. And you have to have it time synchronized with each other to be able to make sure you're getting the right thing at the right time. But anyway,
that would be a whole different possible reason for that to have been flying across us, wouldn't it? To ascertain if it could be picked up.
Exactly. And there are objects that are basically could be flying above us that are also not visible to our naked eye. And so again, it's about, looking at how can equipment help us to learn more about the phenomena. What do these things look like in ultraviolet? We've seen what they look like in near mid-wave IR, that's infrared. And we need to look at the total spectrum and see what they look like. And it's about getting the tools and equipment to see what they look like and to see what we can learn from them.
Well, it's a really big deal because we were told that there's no way that balloon could have been a threat to us whatsoever, and it just got to go merrily along across its way until it completely traversed the United States of America and was then down in the Atlantic. Nothing to see here, folks. Move on. And
which, by the way, was the right thing to do. You don't shoot
yes,
missiles at overpopulated areas at objects.
I know,
And,
but it
by the
wasn't
way,
always overpopulated areas, and nobody knew what it was there for.
exactly.
But, but what I get so interested in so much of this stuff. I love it. And Lorraine Dorsey, who facts matter, is my best friend, right? But she was on her way home. She grew up with her dad at Wright Pat, and so she's familiar with the area. She knows things. She was on her way home from Paulding, Ohio, going home to, I can't remember the name of your town, Lori, but not far from Dayton. But anyway, so she was driving, I'm not mistaken, driving with a friend, so you weren't asleep at the wheel or anything, and saw 3 white triangles.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just probably a week to a month before that been reading about white triangles because I was researching black triangles, and I came across articles on white triangles. They hadn't talked to her about it, anything. And so, she calls me and she's like, I saw 3 white triangles. And I'm like, where did you see them? Wright Pat. It's like, really? That makes it Bell Center. Bell Center is her town. And so I was just like, did you now? And she and Vicky were just like, yes. So I was just so surprised because I'd never heard of white triangles. And then when I started looking, there's a lot of that. I mean, there's not one phenomena that is the phenomena, is there?
No, and the problem is that the objects themselves over the history have been described in every kind of shape you can possibly imagine. It'd be like, so, here's the problem we have with triangles. A lot of people will see 3 lights in the sky and immediately their brain turns it into be a triangle, like it's one object. It might be 3 different lights and 3 different objects, and so ultimately that is a problem for us. She
actually saw the triangle itself. She actually saw
that's a whole different story. If it was a daylight type of sighting, that would be great.
It was not daylight, but it was lit. So
and so if the entire object was like lit, that's great. It's not always the case.
The area was lit. Yeah.
And so but again, is there any data or evidence to back up a story? And the problem that scientists have is that they need data and data to confirm it. It's got to be substantiated. You got to be able to publish a paper on it and have it peer reviewed, and everybody and their brothers is going to be checking on it. And so if we're not going to get anywhere with basically just, if you look at anecdotal storytelling that people have, where they're using words that trying to describe something that they're not familiar with, and it's very inaccurate. They're observing. A lot of people don't even tell you that they have got poor vision, or that they may have taken medications and everything else. And so ultimately, we can't rely on that. It's human testimony, but human testimony is valid in a sense that it can back up data that you've got. And the problem we've had all along with the whole UFO subject is basically that people will have a blurry photograph, and they'll be able to hand you a blurry photograph which of something at night, by the way, and looking at a little light on a dark background is not going to tell you squat about that object. And so I
Well, I'll
don't
tell
care
you,
if you get,
Jupiter, when I saw it last night, was brighter
yeah,
and more clear than most of the pictures that I have
yeah.
seen.
So we're not going to
So,
advance on, we're not going to advance in the study or our awareness of this if we continue to just take in reports. We need to have solid equipment that we can go out with that can help us to get better data than your eyeballs, than your hearing, and everything else. And it needs to be done with multiple pieces of equipment. And I'm sorry, but reality like that is that's better than listening to stories. And so
well, it
when,
absolutely is. But the problem that you have in that instance, or the conundrum, if you would, is that people don't have the majority of people don't have newfound training to
yeah,
do
I-
the
yeah,
to do the math, to get the accurate information that
that's
people
why that's why
science needs to do that.
precisely why we're doing the technology studies to be able to go with scientists to go out in the field and develop the
Yes.
equipment and not and this is also what Aero is doing for the government.
Mhm.
They're not going out and asking for the citizens to go and tell me everything you see, because if you even take a look at that, people are submitting thousands of cases using their cell phone where they're pointing
Yep.
their camera at a light source that gives them a little blue dot down there that they're calling a blue orb, and it's nothing
Yeah.
more than a lens flare.
Yeah.
And I don't want to waste my time after all these years looking at little dots that are camera effects. Nor
Yeah.
do I want to spend my time looking at all this other stuff. I want to be able to get scientific data using the best equipment possible to be able to help me to see these things. Like when they take off instantaneously at fast speeds, we'll have a camera rate where the actual frame rate is about 1,000 per second.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can actually see that object moving off at that incredible speed. Or, like I said about the acoustics, listening to what they sound like in these other ranges. Also, what do they look like in these other parts of the spectrum that we have? Because then we can learn more. Like, for example, we learned by just getting infrared the fact that the objects don't heat up in the atmosphere when they're moving extremely fast. So that, what does that tell you? Well, that's pretty impressive, because how do they not heat up? Everything else in the atmosphere heats up when
Yeah.
it's going at hypersonic
Everything
speed.
else.
So that tells you a lot. And this is what scientists can do in terms of digging in to get the data and actually make these multiple kinds of sensors tell them specific things. Like, when we do the calculations of the speed of the object when it moving from 20,000 feet and stopping of the bother, that was going Mach over Mach 50. That's
Really?
50 times the speed of sound. 50
Wow.
times. The fastest objects we got on the planet right now are probably missiles at about 13, and that's all. This is Mach 50. And what does that equate to? That's equating to it being about 138,000 miles an hour.
Wow.
And
Well, no
so
wonder they can get from system to system.
if objects can move at that speed, and by the way, that's, if you take a look at the, we were talking about the 3i Atlas and stuff like that, that's about the speed of the 3i Atlas. It was.
I know that I frustrated you some with that.
No, that's all right. Because, in fact, I don't know if you know about it, like in 15 days from now, I believe, 15 days from now, it'll be at the closest point to the planet Jupiter. And
Really?
so they're looking at using the spacecraft that are going around that to see if it can get an observation.
That would be nice.
The Juno spacecraft is going to be able to take some photos of it. And anyway, the more we can learn about these things, the better. And let's apply the tools. We all spent money on this. We've developed this stuff. Let's get it going.
But it's just so frustrating when you're a civilian person who doesn't have access to that. And so when you have an experience and you're trying to tell somebody, it's almost disregarded because you can't provide the.
Yeah.
So that makes the average person feel unseen and unheard relevant to something that mattered very much to them. And
Sure.
that's a tough gig, you know, I mean,
It is.
because there is a human side to this.
Yeah,
And
and it's the problem with, again, you mentioned, science talks in math and it talks in, and that type of thing. And
it
that's the
does.
way
It's an
that's the way it was.
absolute.
That's its language. And, we have to try to be able to translate that down to the people who didn't go through STEM training or anything like that, and
Yeah.
bottom line, and get the general public, who then general public is out there trying to interpret it, doesn't understand the math, doesn't understand any of that stuff like that. And so consequently, that's where a lot of the, how do I say it? I want to say, like, and I'm not saying this in an insulting fashion, but that's where a lot of your your conspiracy theories and stuff come in, is because a lot of those people do not read journals, do not go, don't understand it when they were, if there were a journal. And so it behooves the problem of trying to translate from the science down to the general public. And, if you think about it, going back to when when I got started, I remember I was in that science class,
Right.
and I was talking to my science teacher, and I bombed it. I got a D on that because I didn't know how to speak to that. And over the years, I've had to go into the science world and understand more of the science world. And that's been my focus, to be able to then help me to translate. So when I go out and give public lectures and things like that, I can at least bring it down to the common element so that they can understand it. And that's what I'm trying to do here, by the way.
Which you're doing a good job.
I'm trying to be able to educate people based around these two different worlds, if you would. And
they are two different worlds, because
yeah, they are.
Because
Yep.
there have been human interactions.
Yep.
And I firmly believe there have been human interactions. And we were talking before the show about Travis and what happened with him. People saw that, in fact, I was, I'll tell you about that later. But, Robert says there were meetings between humans and non-humans regarding these objects. And there are reports of that. And different
there's a lack of evidence that it actually happened.
There is lack of evidence.
And that's the problem we have, is show me that evidence. So, like, even when David Grush was talking about all that stuff like that, the frustrating thing for all of us on these public hearings is the fact that, well, show me the evidence and stuff like that. And no, we're going to have that in a security classified setting and stuff like that.
But that stuff, but what, Mark D'Antonio saw a USO go by.
Mm-hmm.
And
but he didn't have any evidence to back up his claim. Like, he didn't have the sonar.
Because they didn't keep it.
Yeah. And so that's the problem. It's a story.
But when the Navy is, when our military is ditching evidence or not sharing evidence with people that are capable, and I'm totally sure that your clearance is strong enough.
I've lost you, Kat.
I think she froze up, Rich.
Yeah, it kind of looks like she did. But at least you see that I'm still moving, right?
Yeah, you're still good and everything. She'll probably be back on. She just got off, so she could have technical problems, but yeah. So, but let's see. Go. Here she is.
Okay. My computer just said we've run into a problem and need to restart. So this is my iPad. So
turn it sideways. There you go, Kat.
Okay. I can't see me. Oh, because I'm over here. Okay. Yeah. So here I am. And now my computer is restarting. We'll see what happens when that starts. But and I'm sure that Abby has Dr. Loeb has clearances with Galileo and all this other stuff. But when you have individuals, what is the methodology in place to verify something like with the Nimitz? The radar was functional. The radar picked up and saw how many craft there were in the air. And the technical side from the pilots indicated the capabilities and the speeds that these craft were achieving, right? Is that right?
Yeah. So you had basically eyeballs. You
Mhm.
had the radar that's detecting it
Right.
and watching it and tracking it. And so you've got, again, multiple sensors that are watching and tracking this thing. And then eventually you have the other plane when it lands, the other plane takes off and it's got the actual camera that takes now a video, and it tracks the object and you can see it. So you've got a camera that's picking up, you have sonar that's detecting them. All of the ships that were on that mission were all seeing the same thing because they have a system called Link 16,
Right.
which connects them. And so, again, you have multiple aircraft that are seeing them, multiple eyeballs in the aircraft, and multiple things that are going on. So that's what we want. We want to have multiple things happening that are allowing us to now make some determination and do those kind of measurements.
Another question relevant to the Nimitz, the Nimitz group. When did one of those? Because I don't remember if one of those craft actually splashed or if they stayed airbound.
Well, I mean, so you have to understand that during the course of that week when they were on their this training mission, if you would, and taking the equipment after it had been retrofitted
Mhm.
from the port, they were on a Computex mission where they were going out and exercise, and they were checking out all the equipment and everything else. And so during the course of that week, uh, you had Kevin Day reporting the fact that he
Mhm.
was seeing objects that were coming down from and streaming down from about 80,000 feet
Right.
and coming down either near the water, and he can't, the system wouldn't detect something going underneath the water. Okay. So it at least coming down to the water. So that was happening. And then on the day that the Fravor was doing the exercise, and Dietrich and
Mhm.
and all those were going to go on this exercise,
Right.
you had a Marine pilot that was over in a different aircraft, an F-18, and he actually saw the bubbling up of the water. He didn't see the object, but he saw this bubbling that was going around on the surface of the water, and that's all he saw. Then you have
Okay.
the two F-18s that are going out for this blue-red exercise, and then they saw they saw the object when Fravor decided that he was like seeing something down in the water, and he started diving down toward it. And that's when he noticed that there was this tic tac that was moving and bouncing around on the water above that bubbling on the water. And then he started to go into this climbing rotation where they did a circular pirouette with each other. And then he shot across that circle instead of going around. And that's when the object then shot off and went to his cap point, which was like 40 or 50 miles away or something like that.
Mhm.
And was immediately reported the fact that it's there sitting at his cap point. And by the way, that's a classified point
Right.
around the ship. And so it's like it's sitting there waiting on him. Now he goes and he shoots, and he goes back. They land, they stop the exercise, they go back and they land on the ship. And that's when another F-18 with the actual at-flare camera takes off, and it actually goes up and it does see the object. It captures the video image, and it's now being displayed on all of the systems and all the different
Mhm.
ships. And they're watching that whole thing in shock, as the
Yeah,
object then breaks off and heads
that was
off.
shocking.
Yeah. So that, there
Well,
again, multiple pieces of equipment, and that's what we're looking for.
when oh gosh, I don't know what year this was. Um, the Roosevelt Group had a similar experience in the Atlantic. And I know that I've heard some pilots discuss the fact that they know they're there and that it's a security and safety issue as well, because these craft are not, you know, some, what I heard the pilot say was there's going to be a mistake and somebody's going to die because, as we're flying in protected airspace, they're there. So is that something that is also part of the dynamic, as far as there's kind of an urgency to get answers on this? Is that part of your dynamic, or?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, again, going back to the more that we can learn about the objects, the more that we're going to better understand how are they maneuvering.
Yeah.
If we had better observations and you can eliminate the 80% of all the misidentifications that are out there,
Yeah.
which is the most common problem. It's taking up all of our time at looking at and trying to analyze misidentifications of natural things, right?
But you have to look at them to be able to rule them out, right?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Which is why it's so time consuming.
but it's all about that's why we're not going with human observation, and we're going with more like with equipment, because I don't want to spend the rest of my life all looking at the 80% stuff and not having time to be able to spend on the 20% stuff. So
well, yeah.
the 20% is where I want to spend my time on the years I've got remaining. And the bottom line is that's where we think we're going to get the better answers. And ultimately, what can we learn from it? Well, we can learn, number one, if we had actually the correct data on what are all the specific UFOs or UFO, we can look at where do they show up? And that's what we're doing with our scientific data now. We're finding out the fact that, guess what? The claim that they were around nuclear centers is accurate. We were finding out the fact that when we analyzed it and looked at solid cases and stuff like that, they visited every nuclear storage facility, or they were at detonations. They were at all of our production plants and everything else. And they would do a one-time visit, and then they never came back to them again. It's like we got what we were after, and we went and did what we did. So there was actually an intent on the part of whatever these things were to do what they did. So there's an intent that we were able to find just right there. I'm not going to claim that you can understand what an alien would be thinking, if it is an alien. I don't even go with non-human intelligence as being the moniker that I use for them, because ultimately it's a situation. If you look at what Michael Masters did in terms of his study, you find out that it's interesting, the fact that the only race that's bipedal on this planet is humans. And these things tend to have like 2 eyes, 2 ears, head, 2 arms, 2 legs.
I love his work.
They seem to be bipedal. Well, wouldn't that suggest you the fact that they can pop in and pop out of our space, that maybe they're just time machines or time traveling, and they figured out how to do it, and maybe that those are us from a future time coming back in our time. And so would I call myself being from the future a non-human intelligence? No. So I don't even like non-human intelligence as a moniker, because we don't know where they're coming from.
We don't. But I do think that Michael's, I want to revisit this with Michael Masters, because not everybody knows who he is. But but he did. And y'all have seen him on my show. It's been a little while. We'll get him back. But he is he wrote a book, and it's actually one of my favorite books. And basically it's that it's they're not our ancestors, we're their ancestors, I guess, coming back to kind of see where they came from. which is what we do when we go out into places and do digs, except they've got methods to get around and we're still here. So, did I state that pretty well? I mean,
Yeah.
but
I mean, without a doubt, you did well.
but he's an archivist and he's very busy with his new project. So I haven't talked to him in a hot minute. But I found that to be a plausible explanation. I really did.
Yeah.
I did not see any reason to not believe it, as
Right.
opposed to people coming from, although I would really like for there to be people from another civilization coming here.
Yeah, the problem we have is that nobody knows what the origins of these things are, and nobody knows. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, even to describe an object that's maneuvering around like these other things, the size of a grapefruit, do I believe that there's an alien on the inside of the grapefruit? I don't think so. I don't. It could be a drone. It's like these could be actually, drones, if you would, or something like that, or some sort of we're in our own
Advanced research,
like and these could be robots that are just doing nothing more than checking us out and stuff like that, and monitoring what we're doing, and keeping in touch with wherever they're from. But the bottom line is that there's no origin. We don't know. There's no license plate that's on the back of it that helps me out at all. It could be multiple places that they're coming from. If you look at the description of the beings over the period of the history of the phenomena, they come in every shape and every size that you can possibly imagine.
Yes.
And you would begin to think
style. I mean, with the little claws, and Travis said when he was in a craft that they looked like insects. He thought that, he came up off of his hospital bed, as for lack of a understanding of what else it could be, trying to kill them. And they left and came back in the form of Nordics.
Yep.
Something to soothe him and look more like him. I mean, the whole thing is so weird. It's so weird.
It is weird. And we can't make, human sense out of it because, number one, that they're way more advanced than what we are. And anything beyond our technology and everything else, we struggle with because we haven't learned it yet. Right.
Yes.
And so obviously it's going to take, a period of time before we figure even anything out, because we're still dealing with present day science, and these things are like years ahead of us, so bottom line is we're trying to make sense out of nonsense, and we can't do that. We struggle with that. And anybody who tells you that they got the answer is just, I'm sorry, it's BS. Yeah. Because, you can look at many hypotheses. Jacques Vallée talked about the interdimensional hypothesis. He was always saying that it's from another dimension, that there's an overlapping dimension. There's a multiverse out there that potentially can exist in our space and time. You got ET that's out there maneuvering around, and, they're checking on us. There's the time phenomena hypothesis. And you could go on and on and on and cite all these.
Not to mention the ones that view us as food and they come to hunt. That's my favorite. But that's out there.
Oh yeah,
it is out there. So I just think that this whole thing is way too complicated.
It is.
And when I read Michael's book, I was really pretty much convinced that was a strong possibility. It makes more sense than almost everything else. And, but then again, this is a great big world. We've got multi galaxies. We've got, then we haven't even touched interdimensionality. So there's so much stuff.
I encourage people to watch there's a thing on YouTube called the Epic Spaceman. Epic Spaceman does things where he breaks it down into easy to understand, for us to understand it. So let me give you an example. You know what Fruit Loops are, right? The little
I do.
cereal
all
Fruit
different
Loops,
kinds of them.
Fruit Loops. Okay. Imagine that Fruit Loop is our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy that we live in, right?
Mhm.
All right. You're with me on that, right?
I am.
Okay. Imagine, now you took and you filled up an entire swimming pool, Olympic-sized swimming pool with Fruit Loops, right?
Right.
And now make it 350 swimming pools. That is the number of galaxies that are out there that we know exist out there in the visible world now. 350 swimming pools filled up with Fruit Loops, which each one of those are galaxies, and each
Right.
of them have 200 billion stars around them. And each of them might have potential planets around there and solar systems. That's the scale that we're talking about when we look at the universe out there right now. That blows everybody's mind.
And that's just what we know.
And
Just
there's
the
a,
known.
but it's only because that's the visible. There are
Mhm.
there are continuously, light hasn't even hit us from the furthest ones yet. So there's things way beyond where it's dark that the light hasn't hit us yet because it's traveling across that space.
That's wacky doodle.
It's wacky doodle.
I love it. But, you know, it's so much fun. I mean, I'm sorry. I love this stuff. I totally should never have done pre-law curriculum. That was just a wasted thing. I should have been studying this. But it's so much fun to be able to it's fun to be able to talk to you and people like you because but mainly you because you like me and you take your time with me and I appreciate that. But I think that it's just so terrific because the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, they are.
Endless. We can't even fathom
Yeah,
where this could be going. And it's
we,
not going to
yeah,
be in our lifetime that we're going to understand all
yeah.
of this.
Well, I mean, I'll
And
I'll put this out there. I study also near-death experiences. I've been studying that for years, and I've
I didn't
listened
know
to.
that.
Yeah, that's another one of those things that you didn't know about me, right? So I've listened to several hundreds of testimonies on near-death experiences, and I've been defining the commonalities that you get when these people tell you. All right.
Hmm.
So there are some of these people that go off and they have their near-death experiences where they actually see alien worlds and aliens on different planets.
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, we're not ruling out the spiritual world, as one of your people wanted to ask about. It's
Yeah.
not there. It's just that we can't measure it because there's no way for us to do that. And also, if it's strictly testimony, again, it goes back to anecdotal thing. Do I believe that those people have those experiences? Yes, I do. But I'm not getting much from just a story that people tell me about them seeing that I can accept that that's a hypothesis out there. But again, it doesn't get me very far. And that's why I point out that there's multiple hypotheses. And we can't even begin to imagine what the hypothesis is for this. It could be all these things. They could be
Well,
ET,
yeah.
they could be also time travelers, and they're all coming back and doing the same thing, and we're seeing them. Who knows? Who knows?
But that's
Nobody's
the
got
fun
the
of it.
answer,
That's the fun of it.
including me.
With but it's fun to have the conversation. You
Yeah.
know, we have been we have talked about so many things. And I am a little bit more on the woo side than you are. Maybe a little. And it's just so funny because you recognized a long time ago that the science side of this really excites me. And I think that if there were a way, I wish that there were something, but there's not. To go back and you've got Michael. These are us from another, later generations, and then there's you know, there's pilots that are worried when they're flying on the East Coast sometimes because they're they're not solid objects, but there's a field of energy craft that's there that they feel is a danger. There's, the Nimitz group that, on radar, they're seeing not unlike what's described by the pilots in the Atlantic. There's so much different sides to the phenomenon that it's just mind blowing. And then you've got people that are like, oh, this is prehistoric us. And I'm like, how in the heck can that possibly be prehistoric us? We would look to them like the aliens would look to us if they were aliens. If it's us from another generation or 57 more generations until we get the capacity to be able to do this stuff. There's so many questions. And Robert said, what do these scientific observations tell us about, about any non-human intelligences controlling the UAPs? And Robert, I love your questions. Robert is a huge fake guy, and he is
Good stuff.
he brings me my best questions. And he also said, I actually enjoy and respect your guest in this show. So me too. Me too. So we have a good friendship. But it's just really, there's so many people want this to be what you're saying it can't be. And I understand that. We're getting this stuff happening. We're seeing these things. There's video. You're talking about people disappearing or having horrific or wonderful, depending on their scenario. You've got what is his name? Communion.
Whitley Strieber.
Whitley Strieber, who, is being taken out of his house, being floated out of his house to be taken away to experiences back in the 50s, 40s, 50s, that period, and made, and then he wrote another book about interacting with his wife, who was precious to him as we all should be to our spouse, interacting with him from the afterlife with relevance to the communion experience, right? I mean, there's so many different perspectives. And I just think that there's a lot that's not going to be scientifically proven.
Well, but I really could care less. For me, it's about
I know that.
Because ultimately, you telling me stories and everybody telling me stories for the next 100 years is not going to get anywhere. And science has got the best means to do that, using equipment that can help you to measure things and look at things. And
that's,
we learn from science. That's how we have airplanes up in the air. We learn about things from
which is my favorite.
And everything else that we do. It's all about science. Somebody's out there doing the math, right? So bottom line is, we've got to trust the fact that if you apply science and scientific methods, that you'll get at least information that goes way beyond what people can tell you with their eyeballs and with their ears. And
that's
so
absolutes.
For me, it's a situation where, with the advancements in technology that we've got today, where we can see beyond the visible, we can see it all. We need to apply that now and say, well, what can we learn from the objects that we have up in the sky now?
Yeah.
And that's going to help us even more than, again, storytelling.
I'm trying to get balance here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at right now, Kat. I'm trying to get as much as I can in the way of information, that we can now have a lot of scientists applying their time, schools, universities, and everything else to be able to help us to learn more and to share that information with the global community who deserves an answer.
Well, I will say that that's one of the reasons that I love SCU so much, is because there are so many people doing this.
Yeah.
And, when I started researching this a long time ago, and I mean, because I only had experience with the woo side, right? I didn't
Yeah.
know all of the work that was being done. And so when I started getting to that point, I was like, wow, look at this. This is cool stuff. And I went to the first two alien cons, right? Before the first one, when they had room for 3,000 and like 20 something thousand showed up. And that was exciting. And then I went to the second one, which was at a convention center in Pasadena. That was, that was what was at the convention center, which was what they needed to do. And that's when, that was so long ago that Travis Taylor was on his first Alien Con, right? He had just come into the show. And it was so fun because he did not know a lot about that experience, what he was supposed to do, and things of that nature. It was very new to him. But the people were so excited to be there. The the first one, was pretty darn special. It really was. It was nobody knew what a phenomena that was. They did not, which was why they had rented this little place outside of San Francisco. And I mean, it was nice. It would hold 3,000 people. That's what they thought they would get. And then I don't know what to do with my thumb. Sorry. But it was so overwhelming ultimately because they had no way to deal with the people, and they had to move the the conference, the speaker rooms wouldn't hold a third of the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had to move it out to the vendor area, the sales area. And that still wouldn't hold the people. And it was huge. So the next year, they planned a little better. And it was still overwhelming for
Mm-hmm.
them. But there's such an interest. I say all that to say that there's such an interest in where we came from. You know, how is it possible that there's stuff around us that shouldn't have been that old? I mean, according to them. And I do say according to them because I do take that sometimes with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
Because you should. You just should. But I just find it so interesting that this interest is so overwhelming. And now we've got it going back and coming forward, right? We don't know what we don't know. And we're trying to figure it out. And, here we're looking to the future, right? To the future us coming back to see what we're doing now. And with the ancient aliens theory, it's almost like we're going back to our past to try to figure out where this came from. And it's very hard to make these two outlooks jive. And yet it's the same audience for the interest. Oh, Robert's going to save me from myself here because I'm going on about the weather. But I would like, because you're so insightful, and I keep putting my thumb over my camera, and I apologize for that. I'm not used to this. But And the computer is still not up yet. So I don't know what happened with it, but it's trying to fix itself. But Robert says, what does my guest feel that disclosure would mean? Proof positive of other realm beings? Or is there, if we're coming from the future to us, would there really be a disclosure? I mean, what would that look like? Would there even be a need to have a disclosure?
I've kind of, for me, it's a situation where I don't need disclosure. And a lot of the witnesses don't need disclosure either. I mean, the people
Mm-mm.
who've seen these things don't.
Yeah,
What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Say that they're real
because
when they
they're
said that
there.
for them that it's real? I mean, whatever the phenomenon is. So,
Well, I mean, if you've already gone through it, if you've had an experience, if you've, dealt with this stuff, then
right.
I'm trying to get situated. Then, it's there.
So I
It's
mean,
already your experience.
So somebody that's had a near-death experience and goes off and that was very real to them, and they see aliens and other planets and stuff like that. What do you need from me to convince you that they're real? Okay, you've got that understanding.
Right.
To the witnesses around the planet who have seen them, to the pilots who have chased them, and everything else.
Right.
It's a global phenomena. It's real phenomena, and
Yeah.
what's the big thing here to them? When I say that I've got an object that's moving at Mach 50 and there's nothing on the planet that can do it. Okay, well, I guess that must be that there's something that's legitimately there because it was picked up on sensors and tracked, right? So, I mean, why do I need disclosure? And so disclosure is one of those things where we want to throw it over into the political world and the government world. And we want the government to be able to tell us the truth. And the problem with that is that they've been lying to us for like how long now?
I was going to say the government tell us the
So
truth.
do you
Really?
think that they're going to easily come up and say that that's happened? And then, bottom line is, do I believe that the government necessarily, at least the politicians we got on the Hill now that are just in there for temporary short times, have all the wonderful answers about what UFOs are when I'm telling you science doesn't understand what the heck they are, right?
Yeah.
So they're looking to science to be able to help give them the answers that they can go tell the population and make you all feel better. So we're having to educate them. The problem is that none of them, and allegedly there's all this wonderful thing about these crashes where apparently we've recovered things, and there's a lot of claims of different people that saying, yeah, well, we have these. Maybe or maybe not true, but ultimately it's probably rated at the highest classification you could possibly come up with. And until that happens and breaks, that nobody's going to say squat about proving or making that claim. And then if you're going to make that claim that they're here, you better have some very solid evidence, because all the scientists in the world are going to laugh at you and look at you, and they're not going to accept it. And so, it's kind of like all the things we're being told now. What do you believe is truth out there in terms of any political person? Who would you say should give you the truth? Is it the Pope? Is it
Nope.
who are you going to trust for that information? Are you going to trust the president? Are you going to trust the vice president? Are you going to trust the Pope? Who needs to tell you that?
I would trust Rich Hoffman.
Thank you. But I mean, but what I'm saying is that who's going to say that they're definitely here and this is where they're from? We've actually had it, and who's going to believe that? In this world that we're living in right now, which is so divided on everything, and can't believe everything that we read.
I probably believe Peter too.
So that's the struggle, Kat. I mean, that is a struggle. Who would you accept it from? You said me. You were saying and joking, but who would you say that's going to make that announcement and that's going to make this worldwide claim that we've now got these entities here that are visiting? Especially when you've got NASA saying that there's nothing up there, it's not us, and SETI saying that there's not any, and a good number of scientists even out there.
Seth has told me, and now bear in mind, I was doing SETI through my computer when I was in high school. Okay.
Yep.
College. And Seth has told me that there's never been anything that made him believe that there was anything out there. Seth told me he's never heard anything that made that. I said, really? The wow signal didn't give you a little pause? Really? So he and I had some conversations about that. And I love Seth Shostak. I think that he is a nice man and I love what he does, but we have differing opinions. But I should call him. But
By the
anyway,
way,
the
did you know that that Michio Kaku and all these other people, Brian Cox and stuff like that, were being they used fake videos of them making statements that the 3I Atlas was an alien spacecraft.
no.
And that's up on YouTube, and people watch that stuff, and they all came out and pointed out the fact that those were all faked videos of them. So the question
That's
how do you believe anything that you see out there, right?
not with AI. That's why
Well,
AA. That's why AI
yeah,
is, yeah. And and that is the absolute truth. I don't trust anything AI. I just have. I will eventually as I get used to it, and I realize, and I do understand that there are really terrific, cool things that it can do. I get that, but it is taken because it can be used deceptively. And
yes,
as in the instance that you brought up, I do not think that that is a good thing for society to have. And
I
I know that
completely
the,
agree.
the cat's out of that bag. You can't put it back in. We're going to be manipulated to the nth degree. We're going to
Yep.
be lied to the nth degree.
Yep.
And it's bad enough without AI.
So much of what
I
was
mean,
out
it
there
really
in terms
is.
of so much of what was out there on 3I Atlas that people were looking at
Yes.
was all fake information, bogus photographs, fake interviews with people. I mean, it's
Hmm.
amazing how much of that was
Yes.
fake. And it's
Well,
so the question is, who do you trust?
I have nobody. I mean, seriously, there are some people I would believe. I would trust you. I really would. That wasn't just blowing smoke up your skirt or your lederhosen. But there's also from a government angle or a religious angle, not a damn soul.
Well, that's where
There's
I'm
not
at
one.
too. And so that's why I go back to the fact that I don't spend my time looking at a lot of things like distractions like that. I want to go to published results, scientific studies, or read what I can that's as close to the source and the accurate information that you can get, as accurate as you can possibly get it.
Yep.
And and so I was just flabbergasted by just looking at all of the stuff that you can get into, and YouTube with its algorithms out there just leads you down
Hmm.
a path. And it sends you more crap, and you're
It
watching crap,
does. I mean, and
and
you,
and and that's
and
become
it's,
your reality, right? You accept that as
well,
fact, and now that's where we as a society are falling apart. I mean, basically,
yes, it is. I mean, this AI is not a friend. This is not going to be human friendly,
yeah,
societally friendly. It is
yeah,
absolutely a disinformation tool to make
yes,
you not be able to trust anything. And it's very much, Brave New World, not just a story, but it's definitely, got Soma, it's television and the internet. And, Soma is already here. So absolutely, I think that I think it's toast unless some brave rebellious person comes out and does something. I don't even know what that could be, because the generation coming behind us is more hooked on Soma than we are.
right.
So, there's not Brave New World was not supposed to be a predictive text, and neither was Animal Farm. But there you go. The man knew something. But I got to put my glasses on so I can see what all Robert's writing down here. Primary sources, baby, he says. And he also said,
Exactly.
great show.
Go to the source. Go to the source, and as close as you can, go to the source.
Well,
That's
like I
why
said, Rich Hoffman.
that's why also like again, when I go to the source, even on the NDE kind of thing. I mean, my wife had an NDE experience, so I mean,
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's what got me into this whole looking into this thing was her experience. I mean, she had the typical thing that where she was a pedestrian. Her and her daughter were walking across the street. A drunk driver comes around and hits them as pedestrians and throws her over into head first into the pavement, and she's flopping for a while before she stops. And now she's having the experience of being out of her body and looking down and seeing the whole thing going on and stuff like that, right? And then she
When did
had
that happen?
oh, this was like before I actually met her. This was like in
Okay.
1980s. So I mean, she's a psychologist, my God, and she's not making stuff up. She's a clinical psychologist. So anyway, I trust what she's saying, and she's sharing that experience and the other experiences that she had, by the way. And and then I started looking into it, and I started to talk to other people who were having it, and then that led to more people that had it, and more people, and now I mean, now you're listening to over 200 stories of people having it, and I start to write down all the commonalities between these stories, because even one of the things that got me into the UFO thing at the very beginning was the fact that you could go up and talk to people around the globe, and they pretty much tell you the same thing. I saw a UFO. It was up in the air, and it was doing stuff. And so,
and that was before.
It starts with those stories that I keep negating. By the way, I'm trying to point out the fact that it's the stories that started, but it's now like taking and creating observations of what do you see that you hear repeatedly about. And it's I left my body and I'm always up in the ceiling and I'm looking down at the things that are going on in the room, or I see my body down there. I don't even recognize my body, and I don't even know that that's me. Oh, wait a minute, that is me, and then it's the commonality of people telling you that they're in a dark tunnel, and then they see a light at the end of the tunnel, or they go through a light, or that they see, a being that looks and resembles something like a Jesus. Even the people who are agnostic say that they see somebody like that. And then they're talking about the unique characteristics of the flowers that they see. The flowers themselves are like of colors that you can't begin to describe, and they haven't got a word for it. And there's nothing like that here that they describe. That's a very strong commonality that they have.
Yes.
That many of them will have a life review, and it's like, well, what's that about? But they all have this like life through. Yeah. And then the other interesting thing is that they see their life flashing in front of their eyes, and yet, they did something bad maybe for this person. It's all non-judgmental.
And now it happened to Rich. Well, I guess that y'all are stuck with me for right now. So I'm going to turn this around. And Carl, if he comes back, just grab him in here if you would, please. What he was saying is so interesting to me, because I have talked to people who have had near-death experiences, and they blew me away. Blew me away. And what's interesting is I'm getting a charger, but it's interesting. Well, now you're going to fall to the ground with me. But I actually did not know that his sweet bride had that. So Carl's going to make me turn that back around. But I think that he's right, because these people had particular instances, and they're only their story. It's not something that they are out talking about to just anybody, because it's personal. And I guess that I've had a lot of friends that went through that. Okay, Carl. I've had a lot of friends that went through that. I'm trying, people. Here we go. Okay, now I'm in the right spot, maybe. But it's just such an interesting thing, because abductees abductees have, I don't even know, but abductees have these experiences, and they just are so blown away by them when they try to share them. And then there's times that people don't understand and don't listen to them. And oh, I heard Rich Hoffman enter the studio. There you are.
Man, we're
Hey.
having a fun night. The government's shutting us down or something like that. That's what's
Something.
going
If I were a
on.
conspiracy theorist, I'd go with that. I might be a
Well,
conspiracy theorist on occasion.
anyway, the bottom line,
But
all I was just saying was look at all those wonderful commonalities and near-death experiences and stuff like that. And it's
yes,
just remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. So there's something to it.
there is, which would lead you to think, you know, is there an afterlife? Obviously, there's something.
Well, I certainly believe it because I don't have any reason to
Yeah.
not believe it. And ultimately with that kind of consistency and stuff like that. So I do think that, and that, that also helps me in my faith, so I mean,
It
bottom line
does.
is I think ultimately it's very reassuring for me, and makes me feel even more at peace. And if you talk
Well,
with my wife, she'll tell you that has no fear of dying either. So
I don't think your wife has much fear, period.
she doesn't.
Your wife is bad to the bone. She is.
She
I
is.
think that she
She is.
is just fantastic. But
Thank you.
and y'all are so perfect. So that's just my opinion. But and she puts up with all this craziness.
Yeah,
It's
she's
not
got
crazy,
a
is
lot of
it?
patience.
I mean, what you do is so cool. And
Yeah.
you really can't. I was lucky enough to call Stanton Friedman a friend. Okay. And he was like, you can't argue with facts, and you can't argue with science. And I'm like, well, you can try. He said it's a ridiculous enterprise, ridiculous exercise. And he had the voice. I was like, okay, yeah. But also, the very first time that I had sent him a message and asked him to call me to come on my show, and he called me, and I didn't have my phone on me, and I'd just gotten a watch that you could answer the phone on, and that's what I did. So I didn't know it was him, and I was like, he was like, "This is Stanton Friedman," and somebody called me, and I was like, "I will have to call you right back. I'm so sorry. Give me just 2 minutes," because I was doing cheerleading stuff with Allie, and I called him back, and he was like, "Well, what is this you're on your watch thing?" And I was like, "I was on my watch. My watch is attached to my phone. I was Dick Tracying you, Stanton." Yeah, Dr. Friedman. But well, he was a doctor, Mr. Friedman. And so he was like, "Well, okay, that's cool." I was like, "Phew." And he came on with me. So then we became friends because I was such an idiot the first time we talked, right? But but he would have loved your conversation. He would have loved this
Well,
conversation.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I know Stanton very well too. I've met him.
Yeah.
You can imagine over my 60 years, I've met everybody from,
You know
you know,
everybody.
I've been around the horn, so to speak.
Yeah, you have. In a good way.
I've been to a lot of conferences, and so Anyway, the bottom line is that he's a great guy. I miss him. He was very much a straight point. They're flying saucers, and they're real, and all that stuff like that. His presentations that he did at universities was really appreciated and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
it's all good.
Well, I didn't
Why
know
did
him
we
until
have
the
this
end of his life.
network
So
connection lost? Please reconnect and try again. Network
I
error.
don't know.
Can you hear me?
We'll
Okay.
let Carl. I can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Okay. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. Recording error and everything else that's happening. So anyway,
Well, we'll let Carl handle that because you know what? I was already in here with Carl. Carl, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, just making sure we were all still involved. But this has been, you know what? Government conspiracy.
Yeah, no kidding. They're after me.
Oh, please. You know, it
I,
used
I
to be a
remember when
joke.
I was, yeah, there was one time in Dayton, Ohio, when I was on a radio show, and I remember I was like talking badly about the Air Force project up the road. And don't you know, the radio station went off the air. I thought, okay, what can I say? They decided to take me off the air. You know,
I
even
have been
even
on a
Bob
phone call
West.
and heard somebody chewing a sandwich or something, and it wasn't the person I was on the phone with. So, and that
Oh
person was
wow.
involved in some stuff that would be, you know, of interest to some three-letter agency somewhere, somehow. But and they were like, it happens all the time. And then I heard somebody go like that. Also, not that person. So yeah, they listen sometimes, but we haven't been doing anything that was going to get people's, dander up, except for me saying I wanted woo and you saying that it was the real thing. So it's fun. And Robert, I love you. Robert said, trust no one. Ha. And then he also said, primary sources, baby. And hi, Sue Pits. But I wanted to tell you that you brought up Three Eye Atlas, and you and I had some conversations about that. And so after I was reading some of the stuff you sent me and the stuff that we had talked about also, I was like, well, this is an interesting thing, but okay. So I was doing a show on it, and instead of this is, you know, this is obviously has to be something, whatever. Um, I'm in a black just listening. I like you, T3 disc. But the funny thing was that I did a show on what if this were not a comet? What would what would this be looking like now? And you wouldn't believe the viewership I had for that show. And I didn't announce that that was going to be the way we went with it, right? I was just going to be talking about Three Eye Atlas. And I was just like, okay, so this is a comet. What if it weren't? What would your day look like tomorrow? Or, things of that nature. And I got the most, and people just, I don't know why that many people were coming on. It was interesting to me, but it was cool because there was a lot in chat relevant to that show. And it was just me, just a conversational kind of thing. And there were people from all over the world in that chat. And I thought, I should do philosophical shows more often, you know. But because on Sunday nights I'm up against a lot of good people. We get a lot of re-listens, later listeners and stuff because there's a lot happening on Sundays. But it's just so interesting to me that's what got people's attention was they came in. I guess they were bumping jumping shows to just see who was talking about what. And that kind of caught their eye. I had people from out of the country. I mean, just it was a weird mix of people. And T3 just said, wondering if they taste like chicken and if there's a bag limit. Funny. Definitely Southern, aren't you? But it's just way interesting because we're so taken with, as a species, we are so taken with this topic and with the possibilities, or you know, just the whole, we're so fragile as humans that we want to, I think we just want there to be somebody else there.
Well, I think we
And
do. Yeah.
maybe that's why, even if it could be scary.
No, and what you have, let's look at a very strong interest in this whole subject of UFOs. I mean, that's that UAPs. There's a lot of people across the planet who have actually witnessed these things, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're looking for answers. So and with the fact that you have social media, that it lets everybody around the planet know that there is a show or something going to be on this, or a topic on it. It can very easily get around to a lot of different. Take a look at the fact that we have this really different interstellar kind of an object that's coming into our solar system from out there. That alone would create an interest on the part of everybody to know about that, right? And the fact that it was the fact that it is from out there, it's going to be like our first chance at seeing it. And oh, by the way, we use technology to be able to detect it and see it and learn from it, right?
Indeed. Yeah.
So technology is helping us to get answers.
Technology is our friend.
At the same time,
I mean, it really
we're
is.
out there now looking at it and trying to make observations. And we're trying, yeah. And we're trying to figure out, or what kind of gases is it giving off. These don't match with anything in our solar system. The objects we normally get, it's not acting the same. And so, and the fact that this is our third one that we've actually tracked, should tell us something, because our technology got to the point where we're now actually able to see them. So, and we're able to track them. And so there have been how many before that? Well, we didn't have the technology to be able to do that.
Is it true that there's more coming?
I've never heard anything about a whole train of them.
Not a whole train of them.
Well, I mean, you've had Oumuamua, you've had Oumuamua, and you've had the Borisov, and you've had the 3I. I think it's just that we're seeing. I think that there's a lot. It's a dirty space out there. Start seeing more. Yeah. So we're going to start to see more of them. And we're going to report that the fact that we'll be 4 interstellar, 5 interstellar, and all that other stuff like that. We'll get that, and then we'll be able to see how they act and what they do and how they manipulate around the sun. And bottom line, it's very much similar to at the end when it went by its due. They leak gases, and it's hydroxyls that are giving off, and that's a very common thing. And gases are erupting, and that could change its speed and trajectory and everything else. But anyway, it's leaving our solar system, and it's going to be going by Jupiter, because Jupiter's swinging around the sun and going to be over by that.
Yes.
In about 15 days.
Well, I sure do hope that they get something, because I had my little it's not a little telescope, it's a great big pretty telescope, but I was trying, and I'm terrible with it, I'm still learning it, and I could not even get anything when it was closest to us. And so I had to go to another show and get a look at it. But it was so exciting to contemplate the possibilities. And I think that's really part of the whole, there must be aliens flying these UFOs, because they want to come and, check out the humans kind of stuff. And people just want, for whatever reason, that to be. I'm fine with it being, us from the future. I thought, in fact, when I got Michael's book, that's when I first started talking to him. He had just come out with this book. I was at UFO Congress in Phoenix, and it was there were so many interesting people at that conference, and he was one of the people I met there, and I really like and admire him a lot. And he's so busy now with his archives; he's taken over so much that he's a really credible person, and he just put this idea out there. And I really, you brought it up that the people in these UFOs are us from the future. I think that's probably one of the best explanations there are. If we can make something that flies that way, we
Yep.
surely can do something that will get us that far. And
Yep. And all three of the objects we've had that are interstellar have been weird, and they've been described as being very weird. So
very
they're made up
different.
of different chemistries.
Mhm.
They're all very different. They're not similar to our solar system. So they're coming from out there. They got different kinds of gases. They got different
Mhm.
kinds of chemical compositions. They're moving at relatively quick speeds. They can also change speed because you can, actually the gases emitting from them actually change and
Mhm.
alter speeds.
Right.
Um, and so the heating up as it went around the sun can cause it to actually speed up because it's now eliminating more gas, and it was actually tumbling and rotating there for a while. But anyway, I'm not
Yeah.
going to,
That's what I thought about a moon
all I
glow,
can say is that we're going to, yeah,
the tumbling.
it's a rather large object, and it's
Well, it
pretty
was so
strange.
elongated compared to um, the 3i in appearance, I mean,
Yep.
but in the
Yep.
texture was different too. See, it's just so interesting. It's like picking up rocks down by a riverbed, and you get one that looks this way, you get one that looks that way. And I think that's what we're going to see with anything that comes through because they're all individual. If they start looking alike, then we're going to have another craft conversation. But I just loved that period. And I loved how much help you were to me with that. Thank you. That was
You're welcome. I was glad
good
to be able
information.
to keep, just like just like the fact that people were reporting the fact that it was giving off radio emissions and stuff like that, radio signals. Well, I helped to understand that hydroxyl, when it's created and stuff like that, actually can be detected on radio, and so they were picking up the frequencies of a hydroxyl gas that was being where the hydrogen and oxygen are actually splitting apart, and the atoms, and it creates a radio signal, and you can pick it up. So you
Wow.
probably didn't know that comets
I
can
did
have a
not.
radio signal, and so yeah,
That's cool. Well, you know, I was, I almost,
yeah,
I was, we're
yep,
going to have to go, but I was almost done because I was just like, this is, this is a ridiculous press conference. Because if I were going to want to come out and tell people this is what I'm saying, but this isn't it, I would have come out just like they did on television and said, this is a comet, as opposed to starting off with friendly conversation. And I know people are wondering here, but we've done the testing and we've got this. So it's a comet. But it was just so austere and so brusque. And I'm just like, really? Really? Hmm. I don't believe you. So
well,
I did
if
believe
you
them, but
if
it
you
was
talk
funny.
if you yeah, if you talk to the International Astronomical Union and stuff like that, those people already knew it was a comet.
Yeah.
What was
Well,
causing a lot of consternation and confusion was, of course,
yes.
Avi Loeb. He was talking a lot of, yeah.
Well, yeah. And I love him to pieces, but yeah, I love his work to pieces. I don't know him. But I think that Although I
Well,
think you would be fun.
yeah, he was bringing it to everybody's attention, and he's credible.
Yeah. So, well, we are going to have to go. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry about my computer going dead. And it still is like doing the spin thing. I hope that's not the spin of death. But 'cause I love this computer. But what all do you have going on? I know that you've got meetings and conferences and everywhere that you're going. And I know that you had mentioned some other work that you were doing right now. When am I going to see you again? SCU?
Yeah, well, SCU
Well,
is
I
going to
will
be in
see you
Toronto,
virtually on
Canada this year.
SCU.
Right?
Yes, I'm going to have to be a virtual attender
Yeah,
this year.
yeah, yeah.
But although I love Toronto.
I will too. But
Oh, are you?
explorescu.org is where we're going to be making the announcement. It's July 24th to the 27th in Toronto, Canada. And then this Thursday, I'll be on that show that I mentioned, or I'll be doing a presentation. It's the Society for UAP Studies. Yeah, and then on the 14th, I'm going to be speaking locally here to the other interest group that we have that Sue Pitts actually leads. I'll be doing a presentation there at I believe noon at the Meteor Buffet in Huntsville. So I've got a lot of things on my plate. Again, tomorrow I've got the interview with History Channel, and anyway, we'll see where all this stuff goes.
It's never boring being you. I like that. Well, send me the information on the one in Huntsville.
Okay.
And maybe I can zip up there for that. But thank you so much for being here. Obviously, we were talking about important stuff, or we wouldn't have had all these glitches. Well, I just love getting the chance to talk to you. I think you're so cool. But well, hi to Rhonda.
Thank you, hon.
And I will talk to you. And T3 Disc said, thank you both. Good podcast. Thank you very much. So I will talk to you soon. And don't forget to send me that location, okay?
Will do.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time. Same cat channel. Good night.